The Asha Degree case, this is everything that we know so far. Disclaimer, this is going to be a very long video. I'm going to try to get it all in 10 minutes, but I may have to post a part 2. 9-year-old Asha went missing back on February the 14th of 2000. She left her home in the early morning hours of February the 14th, which was a Monday morning. She was just coming off of a 3-day weekend. That Friday, February the 11th, they were out of school, reportedly for a teacher workday. Asha was a 4th grader here at Falston Elementary, which is located just about 5 miles from the home on Oakcrest Drive where she lived when she vanished. Asha lived with her parents, Harold and Asha Degree, as well as her older brother, O'Brien, who was 10 years old at the time she went missing. Now, both of Asha's parents worked. Her mom worked first shift at her job, and her dad worked second shift at his job. So she and her brother would ride the bus to and from school, and in the afternoons after school, because of the shifts that her parents worked, there would be a short period of time where Asha and her brother were home alone, and they both actually had keys to the home. This is the home where Asha lived with her brother and her parents. It is a duplex and just a very small home. It only had 2 bedrooms, so Asha and her brother Brian actually shared a bedroom. This is the subdivision where the house is located, and this is Highway 18, which is actually the highway where she went missing from. Now, this little subdivision reportedly at the time had about 18 houses in the subdivision, and some of Asha's family members actually lived on the same street. And it's reported that on that Friday, February the 11th, when she and her brother were out of school and her parents had to work, that they did stay with her Aunt Keisha, who lived there in the neighborhood. Asha and her brother both played basketball. Asha was the star point guard for her basketball team. They were a very good basketball team, and on that Saturday, February the 12th, Asha's team had a basketball game, and her brother's team also had a basketball game the same day. It's reported that Asha's team lost their basketball game when they expected to win it, and that Asha was very upset about this. She actually reportedly fouled out late in that ball game. She was so upset that it's reported that she was crying, but that she soon got over it, and she stayed and she watched her brother play. And then after his game, she actually reportedly went to a sleepover at her cousin's house where there was about a dozen other girls there. So on that Sunday, February the 13th, Asha's parents and her brother, they come and they pick her up early from the sleepover, and the family attends church. After church, they go to another relative's home for a get-together. And her grandmother is there at this get-together. Since Valentine's Day was the next day, it's reported that her grandmother gave all the kids Valentine's gifts and Valentine candy. So after that get-together, the Degree family, they go back home, and around 6:30 p.m., Asha actually ends up falling asleep because she'd probably been up most of the night at that sleepover. And around 8 p.m., a severe thunderstorm moved through the area. It's reported there was a lot of thunder, lightning, and wind. Now, as that thunderstorm moved through, that actually woke Asha up, and she went to the living room, reportedly to watch TV with her family. Around 8 p.m., a car had a wreck and crashed into a utility pole, which knocked out power to the Degree home as well as other homes in the area. Now, at some point, Asha and her brother, they go to bed, and around 12:30, just after midnight, the power comes back on at their house. And her dad reports that he looked into the bedroom of the children. He saw them both sleeping. He ended up staying up later watching TV. Obviously, he works second shift, so he's used to staying up late. And as he was getting ready to go to bed around 2:30 a.m., he reports that he looked back in the bedroom and he saw both children asleep in their bed. And then Asha's brother O'Brien reports that at some point, not too long after that, he hears Asha's bed creaking, and it's his assumption that she's just rolling over, shifting positions. And then around 6:30 a.m., when Asha's mom goes to wake the kids up for school, that's when she discovers that Asha is missing. She quickly calls family members that live nearby to check to see if Asha's at their house, and Asha was not there. So at 6:38 p.m., the dad, Harold, he phones 911. And just 2 minutes later, at 6:40 a.m., the first officer arrives on the scene. All the doors were locked, all the windows were closed and locked. There was no indication of any forced entry. And since Asha and her brother both had keys to the home, it's assumed that when she left, she locked the door. Now, just 2 minutes after the first officer arrives, at 6:42 a.m., the sheriff, Dan Crawford, he arrives. And he pretty quickly calls for canines to come in to try to track her scent. But it's reported that the dogs were unable to track any scent really at all, even near the home. Now, according to multiple sources that I've read, the rain from the storm could actually help the dogs to track a scent, but the wind could deter them from being able to track a scent. Now, media quickly gets wind of this story, and it's reported that they very quickly set up outside of the home. And at 2 p.m. on February the 14th, 2000, Valentine's Day, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation shows up at the home, and they quickly tape it off as a crime scene. Searches are done, nothing turns up. Aisha's family, mom, dad, they realize that her book bag is missing. So at some point, it appears that she packed her book bag. Now, we don't know when she packed her book bag or for what purpose. Her book bag could have already been packed from that sleepover that she'd been to, or maybe she was leaving to go meet up with someone. We just don't know. We don't know when the backpack was packed, why it was packed, or why she left home. Now, her family reports that two outfits were missing: her basketball uniform, a Tweety Bird, and a Tweety Bird purse were missing. Investigators are searching the area, and they actually end up getting calls from two different truck drivers who came through Highway 18 around the same time that Asha is apparently walking down the highway headed south from her home. Now, the first driver, law enforcement, they get both drivers to come back to the area, and within 36 to 48 hours, both drivers have come back to the area, and they show law enforcement where it was that they saw Asha. The first one reports seeing her here in this area, and he attempted to engage with her because he sees she's a child walking down the road at 3:30, 4:15, and he says that she ran into the woods. And this is the area where he says that she was spotted. Now, the Turner shed, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The second sighting was here near this intersection of 180 and Highway 18, and that was another truck driver. Two independent truck drivers report seeing who they believe to be Asha that morning. The second one initially thought that it was a woman, but then when he found out that there was a girl missing, then he thought maybe it was Asha. So he goes back and tells law enforcement this is the general area where he spotted her. And just really quickly, this is what that intersection of 180 and 18 looks like. Now, back to driver number one, near the Turner shed. This is that strip of highway. And this is that shed, or what they call a shed. I think it's more like a barn. It's pretty large. It's got some heavy equipment in it. It's reported that this is 300 to 600 yards off of the highway, so 1 to 2 football fields. So law enforcement, they get the people in the area to check their outbuildings, maybe she's hiding somewhere, and the Turners, they go check this shed. Now here's a closer view of that shed, and inside the shed. And right here is where Mrs. Turner finds a few items of interest. She finds several things, but this photo right here of this young girl is the only thing that she initially gives to law enforcement, but no one knows who this child is. Now, she also reportedly finds a white 1996 Atlanta Olympics pencil, a green marker, and a yellow Mickey Mouse beret, and those are all items that Asha's parents said Asha had. But she doesn't turn those things over to law enforcement until those truck drivers, they come back to the area, and they actually find some candy wrappers kind of on the side of the road in the area where they saw Asha. And it's reported that that same candy is or was given out by the school. And so at that point, Mrs. Turner decides that she better tell law enforcement about these other items that she found. On February the 20th of 2000, so 6 days later, they stopped their ground search for Asha. But on February the 21st, the following day, they decided they were going to set up a roadblock right there in that same general area during the hours when she was last seen. And their thought was that maybe they would catch someone who was coming through there who only traveled through there during those hours. Maybe they worked during those hours and they were traveling to or from work. And so for 4 hours, they had a roadblock. On February the 24th, which was a Thursday, the Charlotte Observer ran this photo in their newspaper to try to identify who this child is. Now, they actually put this teeny tiny photo at the very bottom of page 75 of 108 pages on a Thursday. Probably wasn't seen by very many people. And then on March the 22nd of 2000, Asha's parents put up this billboard along Highway 18 right in the area where she was last seen. Law enforcement was looking into locally registered S offenders to see if possibly they had something to do with her disappearance. And they also had an FBI profiler to do a psychiatric profile of who they thought this person could be responsible for Asha's disappearance. But those results have never been released. And then the case kind of goes cold until August the 3rd of 2001, about a year and a half later, when a man named Terry Fleming, who owned a company called Precision Grading, was working on a construction site up here about 27 miles from where she was last seen, and he actually finds her book bag. It's reported that it was buried, that it was wrapped in 2 black plastic garbage bags, and that it was buried. And inside the book bag is her name, her phone number, possibly her address, and some of those items that her parents identified were missing that they thought she had taken with her. It's reported that inside that book bag was a Tweety Bird purse, jeans with a red stripe, black sneakers, a long-sleeve white t-shirt with purple lettering, a red vest with black trim, black Tweety Bird overalls, and a long-sleeve black and white shirt. Now, today, we also know that there was a book and that New Kids on the Block sleep t-shirt, but at the time, we did not know that. Law enforcement says that this book bag was found about 50 yards off the road, and even though it was buried, they suspected that it had actually just been thrown out of a vehicle, and that over the years with construction going on in the area and dirt work being done, that it was actually buried through that. But at the point that the book bag was found, that is when they really began to believe that foul play was involved with her disappearance. They also started to believe that the perpetrator lived in the area where the book bag was found. And then nothing happens. Nothing happens until February of 2015, when the FBI and the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office announced that they are re-examining the case. And oddly enough, on May the 31st of 2015, so just a few months after it's announced that they are re-examining this case, the sheriff, the man who was sheriff at the time that she disappeared, Dan Crawford, he dies from a self-inflicted GSW. In May of 2016, the FBI announces that they believe that the suspect vehicle is a 1970-ish model green Lincoln Continental Mark IV or a Ford Thunderbird. Now, we're really not sure where this information came from, but they say that the car was discovered by legwork between the sheriff's office and the FBI, and that Asha may have been sighted getting into a dark green vehicle with rust around the wheel wells. And then again, nothing happens until October of 2018, when they release that this New Kids on the Block sleep t-shirt, along with this Dr. Seuss book, were also found in Asha's book bag. Now, this book was basically proven to have come from Asha's school, although they don't know who checked it out. And this t-shirt was a mystery because Asha's family said it wasn't her shirt. Now, this shirt was sold at major retailers like Kmart, Walmart. You didn't have to go to the concert to have the shirt. But it ends up there's actually DNA on this shirt. And there, between 2018 and September of 2024, so less than 6 months ago, apparently there was a match on some of the DNA through a genetic genealogy type situation. And because of that DNA on that shirt, it actually matched the youngest daughter of this man here. This man is Roy Dedmon, and it matched his youngest daughter, Anna Lee, as well as another individual by the name of Russell Underhill. Now, Russell Underhill was an individual who was a patient or lived at a nursing facility that was owned and operated by the Dedmons. But Russell Underhill passed away in 2004. I'll come back to that. So the FBI and other law enforcement, they all descend on this home at 601 Cherryville Road in Shelby, North Carolina. And they begin to do this search of this home, which had been the home that Roy Dedmon had previously lived in and still owned. So on September the 11th, 2024, they execute the search warrant, and the man that lives in the house at that time was a man by the name of Jeffrey Spencer. He reported that he'd lived there for about 5 years, and that there were 3 rooms that had been padlocked by Roy Lee Dedmon, and that Roy Lee Dedmon had told him that it was his personal belongings that were padlocked behind these doors in this house. Also on September the 10th of 2024, a Laura Dedmon, who is my understanding is the niece of Roy Dedmon, was interviewed and says that several years ago that Roy dug a chest-deep hole in the property at 601 Cherryville Road, and the investigator during this execution of the search warrant observed a 6 to 8 inch dent in the ground where it was obvious that the ground had been disturbed on the property. The investigator observed this during his voluntary contact with the current resident, Jeffrey Spencer. And then it goes on to talk about that based on his training and experience that the investigator knows when a crime occurs, there's often a transfer of evidence, and that it is a known fact that people in general will keep personal effects from or at their homes, at their place of domicile, when they've committed a crime. Now, this last sentence also said it is probable and likely that Sarah Gwen Dedmon Capel removed personal effects and or evidence pertaining to I don't have the rest of that, but I will get it. On September the 18th, an individual who had previously been an acquaintance of the Dedmon sisters comes forward to law enforcement, and he says that back in the early 2000s that he was actually at a party where Lizzie Dedmon, the oldest Dedmon sister, who was 16 at the time Aisha went missing, and the middle sister, Sarah, who was 15, had been at this party, and that Lizzie was intoxicated, and she started crying and said, "I killed Asha Degree." And then the individual tells law enforcement that Sarah overhears this and tells Lizzie to shut the F up. And this individual is very confident in his memory. He actually ends up taking a polygraph, which he passes. Now, just for reference, this is a photo of the Dedmon family. This is Mom Connie, Dad Roy, this is Anna Lee, this is Lizzie, the oldest. This is the one whose DNA was on that New Kids on the Block shirt. And then this is Sarah, the middle one. Lizzie is the one who said at the party, allegedly, "I killed Asha Degree." Sarah is the one who allegedly told her to shut the F up. Now, shortly after this search warrant is executed, the attorney for Roy Dedmon, his name is David Teddy, he's a criminal defense attorney in the Shelby, North Carolina area. He does a press conference and basically says that the Dedmons have nothing to do with this and that he is confident that the evidence is going to point to someone who is already deceased. And with that, many people seem to believe that he is speaking about Russell Underhill, whose DNA was also on that New Kids on the Block shirt. Russell Underhill passed away not too many days after Christmas Day in 2004, and his cause of death was undetermined. It is reported that on September the 27th of 2004 that agents show up to the place of employment of Lizzie Dedmon Foster. She is the oldest of the Dedmon sisters, and that she initially agrees to talk and then she changes her mind and refuses to take a polygraph. They say that she then phoned her ex-husband, and so law enforcement then goes to her ex-husband's home, and they say that although they saw a young girl in the window, that no one ever came to the door. On February the 10th, 2025, Lizzie Foster was approached again about taking a polygraph, and it's reported that she became very emotional and that she agreed to take a polygraph. And they say that there was one question when she was asked if she was concealing information and that she was found to be deceptive on her answer to that question. So shortly thereafter, law enforcement actually get warrants for the cell phones of Lizzie, of Sarah, of Anna Lee, and possibly of Roy, but we don't see any of his text messages released. So last week, text messages, they were released, and I'll share them with you. Now, I've already been through most of these, so I'm not going to go through all of them again, but just of note, Sarah, the middle sister, is discussing with Lizzie, the oldest sister, the shirt, and they're noting that Aisha's parents said it wasn't her shirt, and they also say they don't remember the shirt and that they're scared and that Dad is probably going to be a huge suspect. So then little sister Anna Lee tells Lizzie, the oldest sister, that she did not need to be talking to anyone and that she herself, Anna Lee, was at the lawyer's office now. And then Anna Lee tells Lizzie that they advise we should not talk to them at all without representation. And then Lizzie starts texting her ex-husband and says this is not going to get anything but worse. She was getting something to take for her nerves. She's just so worried. She says it's a nightmare that's going to continue to get worse and that she sees nothing good happening anytime soon. That there is no way this is going to be okay. And then Lizzie says that she talked to David Teddy. He's the family attorney, and that the theory was that she did it and it was an accident and that she covered it up. And Sarah tells her, no, why would it be you? And Lizzie says, that's what he said. And then Lizzie says to her ex-husband, I don't know what to do. I caused this. And her ex-husband responds and says, no, you didn't. And then again, we see Lizzie texting with middle sister Sarah, and Lizzie wants to know if everybody's mad at her. Sarah says no, and that it is not your fault, Lizzie. And then we see more conversation continuing about how she's so anxious. She wants to know what's going on behind the scenes. What are they doing? And what are they going to do because she wouldn't talk to them? And then Lizzie tells Sarah, I'm afraid it's going to get worse. Well, he told me it's going to. So it is my assumption, my opinion, that she probably means the attorney told her that it's going to get worse. And then Sarah tells her, if they come at you again, just go and be compliant. That's what Sarah says she's planning to do. And Lizzie says, I think so too, honestly. I mean, I want to do what Dad says, but damn. And then Sarah says, maybe we should just let you do what you wanted to do originally. They continue to discuss. They don't really know what to do. And then Sarah says, right, you don't want something we do or say to impact him, Dad. But we also can't be living like this either. I mean, I told him I'm not going to do that. So then she says that Dad says that he's going to call Teddy and they're going to go get a polygraph with the honest people. And Lizzie says, oh, okay. Anyway, those text messages just continue, and according to students of Lizzie Grace Foster Dedmon and co-workers of Lizzie Grace Foster Dedmon, law enforcement came in and escorted her from the property. And according to the school, she is no longer employed there. I don't know if she is on administrative leave, but according to many sources, she is not there. But as of now, no one has been charged at all. And I do believe that law enforcement released these text messages to apply pressure to Lizzie Grace and Sarah especially. Not Sarah especially, but Lizzie Grace and Sarah especially. So, what do you guys think happened? Because my opinion changes daily. And since the text messages have been released, we have not had any sort of statement or press conference or anything from the family attorney, David Teddy. Interestingly, just like a month after that search warrant was executed, when Jeffrey Spencer, who was living there at 601 Cherryville Road, tells law enforcement about the padlocked rooms, he passes away at the home on October the 19th of 2024. Now, it's reported that he actually had cancer and this was not some unknown cause of death. Also of note, this is an interview that was done, I believe, in 1970, where Roy Dedmon was opening a private school. They had 3 teachers, 24 students, it was a very shortened school day, and right here, he refused to comment directly on the school's rigid policy of segregation. This was in 1970. So, lots going on in the Asha Degree case. It doesn't seem like we have any answers yet, but I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic that answers will be coming soon and that Asha's family will finally be able to get some justice, and hopefully they will finally find out what happened to their baby girl.